starting recording. It's in progress. Okay, hello and hi everybody. Welcome to our fourth meetup, following by our initiative Agile with Ukraine. My name is Andriy Glushenko, and you can call me Andrew. Today we have an amazing guest who doesn't need an introduction. It's Jurgen Appelo. Yep. So thanks. First of all, Jurgen, thanks for joining us. And thank you that you're joining us under the circumstances that you have COVID as well. So we have to be, Jurgen told us that we have to be active. We have to ask a lot of questions. So it could be interactive. So it could be easier for Jurgen. Okay, deal? Cool. So about our initiative. So when the war started, we started as every Ukrainian, and our team consists mainly of Ukrainians, but we also have amazing Ravi Verma, for example, and Aina, who don't live in Ukraine. I also don't live in Ukraine, but I'm Ukrainian born and Ukrainian to my core. And we wanted to start an initiative that would continuously help Ukrainian people and Ukrainian army. That's how our initiative started, and our intent is to invite the world best speakers on the topic of agile business agility to share their wisdom, to share their knowledge so people could listen, but also we would like to raise donations. I'm sure everybody knows what happens in Ukraine and how it started, but for me it actually started pretty drastically because on 24th of February, when the war started, it's actually the birthday of my mother. And growing up, I was a super stubborn kid. I was a big trouble for my parents. If there could be any trouble I could get into, be sure I was there. And now I know how dumb was I and how many problems I caused my parents. That's why 24th of February was a special day for me always because of my mother's birthday. And I woke up at 5:50, I believe, or 5:45. Warsaw time, and I know my mother wakes up early because she works out in the morning. What kind of person does that? I have no idea, and never have I ever congratulated my mother on your birthday starting with the words, "Are you safe?" And this is an awful experience. And what happens in Ukraine right now, so I'm just going to show you one thing. Those are the 4 cities that are being bombed in Ukraine. On the left up, we have Kharkiv, the city with official population around 1.4 million of people, which means that normally there live around 2 million people. There are not much cities like that in the whole Europe, where you have 2 million people living over there. And what I'm showing, so Kharkiv on the top left, and this is the central square of Kharkiv. It's called the Square of Freedom. This is the largest square in Europe. Do you see any military object over there? I believe not. So on the right, you have also one of the central parts of Mariupol, the city where there live around 400,000 people, lived 400,000 people. And this city is under the siege right now. So I remember Mariupol being a kid. I used to play basketball. If I show a hand like this, you can see a basketball over there. I played there a lot of times, and Azovmash, the team from Mariupol, was one of our biggest competitors. And I remember the city. It's an awesome city. Right now, unfortunately, we don't have a city anymore. On the bottom left, you have the central administration of the city Chernihiv. It's 200 kilometers from Kiev. It's also the central part of the city. And here on bottom right, you have the city Sumy, around 300,000 people living over there. This is the school, which is actually in the city center. So why support Ukraine? Because the war is not far from the rest of the Europe. I live in Warsaw. I live in Warsaw for 10 years. And it's only 800 kilometers to Kyiv. And by the blink of the eye, if Ukraine doesn't win, the war can be pretty near us, people living in Europe, people living in European Union. So about the initiative, we started cooperating with the foundation, which is called Unite Earth. And this is an awesome foundation. So The first Russian invasion in Ukraine happened in 2014 by the annexion of Crimea and also by invading Donbass. And this is the organization that was working with Ukrainian armed forces and a ton of volunteer organization across Europe, but also in Ukraine to provide help, both for the army and both for Ukrainian people. When the things de-escalated from our side and it was more calm, they started a lot of great initiatives, such as, for example, Christmas Without a Dad, which was an initiative dedicated for children who lost their fathers in the war. They provided help with education for them. They provided help with clothing them. They provided financial help for them. But they also made some kind of vacations for children in Europe with tour guides and stuff like that. So this is an awesome foundation. I know those people personally, and why we started cooperating exactly with that foundation. So we all love hearing about agility, business agility, being up to speed, being fast, and we all are fans of shortening the time to market. So this organization has the shortest time to market I've ever seen. Right now, when I'm as a professional Scrum trainer at Scrum.org, I won't make any examples about continuous integration, which I've seen in the companies that I worked in, but they are working with continuous integration. The moment money gets to their account, this is the moment that they're buying stuff. And one of the fastest way how help can get to Ukraine is actually donating to this foundation. I know people personally who work there. I trust them, and if my word means anything to you, I can assure you that every cent that is being donated to that foundation is being used properly. And what are we raising funds for? So we understand that not everybody might feel comfortable in donating for various stuff. That's why we have three main directions where we raise funds to. First one is humanitarian medical help. So humanitarian help is an obvious thing, but as for medical help, it can be divided in two things. First, regular medical help, which goes to bomb shelters and shelters where people hide from bombing. But second kind of medical help goes exactly to the medical doctors who are curing people on the battlefield. The second direction is Kevlars and helmets. So why do we raise money for that? Because currently Ukrainian army is combined from two main parts. First part is armed forces of Ukraine, where we have well-trained people and more or less equipped with equipment like that. But also we have something that is called the territory defense, which is mainly from veterans of the war in Donbass, but also pure volunteers, people like we, who just decided to stand up and defend their country. And right now we have more than 100,000 men and women in reserves, which means that those people are now waiting for being called over there, and they cannot be called over there because they just don't have Kevlars and helmets. We're not barbarians like the other side who pushes people to go into fight in sweatpants, you know? And the third part is tactical equipment like thermal vision, night vision, drones, gloves, boots, and stuff like that. So the foundation is official, it is registered. I will send you our website and also the website of the foundation. I will drop it into the chat, and there are two easy ways how to donate. So for people who live in Europe, one of the easiest ways is by the Polish service zrzutka.pl, where you can donate, and you can also see the progress bar. But also, if you don't trust the website, we have integrated with PayPal and Stripe, so it would be easier for you guys to donate and help Ukrainian army. Okay. Thank you for your attention, and now let's go to the awesome part of this evening by having Jurgen over here. And Jurgen, I shut up. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Andriy. Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this meetup. I am happy to be here. I must apologize for the fact that I feel a bit tired. I had COVID last weekend, 3 days of fever, that I survived. So I'm still coughing and sneezing a little bit, but that's the worst of it. But that somehow turned into insomnia in the last 3 nights, so I didn't sleep a lot. So I'm a little bit tired, but I'm sure I will get through with your help. I will count on you to help me there. Yeah, it's an honor to be part of this thing that you have started. I have been in Ukraine more times than I can count, to be honest. Not only in Kiev, but I've also been in Zhytomyr, in Dnipro, in Lviv, probably one or two other cities that I don't even remember from my conference schedule of the last 10 years. So I know many people. I have worked with some, not only organizers of workshops and conferences, but also actual team members that I had in the past working in or from Ukraine. So what happens there is it touches me personally. You can definitely tell me. I could definitely tell you that. So I have been wondering, what can I do? Of course, I've already done the usual things, like I donated. I have expressed my support online on the socials. I even sent a message to all the Russians on my mailing list. Who knows what that can lead to? And then someone said to me, and I think that was super sweet. One of the Ukrainian friends I have, she said to me, Jurgen, you've already been doing for 10 years what we need, which is teach people how to have meaningful organizations with self-organizing teams, happier people in happier jobs. That is the antidote to what happens here. So I was very happy for that encouragement. Just do what you've always been doing, she said to me, and that will help the world. So thanks for that. That's what I will do now. I will do what I've always been doing, help people have better organizations. So this is called Agile with Ukraine, and so the Agile community, I consider that my home community, and it is in a bit of a mess, to be honest, if you ask me, because there are these things going on, such as there was recently a net promoter score calculated of the most popular Agile framework that we have, the scaled Agile framework, SAFe, and the NPS score is -56. Imagine that. That is extremely dissatisfied. That's the most popular framework that we have, makes people very unhappy, apparently. So there's something we're not doing well in our community. I saw a good number of articles in the last few years. They say things such as Agile is dead, McKinsey killed it. Is the Agile Manifesto dead? The death of Agile and beyond. That sounds ominous. Agile might be dead, but agility is not, etc., etc. The tone is obvious here. There's something going on. We need to move on with Agile and fix some of the problems. And I think one of the issues is the current frameworks that we have. We can do better. We can fix them. I will share my thoughts on that. And also, we need to move beyond just product. There's portfolios, finance, marketing, HR. We have no real answers for them yet, how they should organize themselves. There's not a single Agile scaling Agile framework that basically says how HR should be organized, for example. So we have stuff to do. Fortunately, there are people showing us the way. And one company that has inspired me very much is a Chinese company. They are called Haier, and it is one of the largest companies in the world. Actually, is the world's largest home appliance brand, and also the most valuable Internet of Things company in the world. The CEO is Mr. Zhang. I was there 10 years ago. almost exactly 10 years ago in Qingdao, the city on the East Coast. And Mr. Jiang actually wrote the foreword for the Management 3.0 book translated into Chinese. Super cool. I did Management 3.0 workshops there. And at the time, they were already experimenting with completely changing their organization. They were turning into a network of 3,000 micro enterprises, as they call it, 3,000 small units that self-organize as individual businesses with no middle management. They literally fired all the middle managers in the entire company and told them, you're going to either run your own business as a micro enterprise, or you have to find another job somewhere else. Right now, they have 4,000 autonomous units. And here's a little video that describes what they have been doing.
The most eye-catching element of Hire's reinvention is the change in organizational structure. The hierarchical pyramid was pulled down and replaced with a network of more than 4,000 highly autonomous micro-enterprises. Typically, a micro-enterprise employs 10 to 15 people and functions as a separate business. These independent units contract with one another to deliver products and services.
So they were already working on that as 10 years ago, and they asked me for my advice. They said, this is what we're doing. Do you have suggestions for us? And I said, I have never seen something like that before. This is mind-blowing. And they paid me, which is interesting. I should have paid them for the inspiration for just what they were doing. And they have moved beyond since then, and there's articles on it. There's a book coming out later this year by corporate rebels. I can probably, I will be recommending that book once it is out, because it is super interesting company. But the foundational building block is the micro enterprise. That is a unit of about 15 people, more or less, that operates as a fully autonomous unit, its own little business, basically. And all those units are different. Some are manufacturing units, some are marketing units, some are HR units or recruitment units, some are units that connect other units, that specialize in being the glue in the network and making sure that the others can find each other and contract with each other. So that's a network that is horizontal instead of vertical. And for me, that indicates, that is connected to this first part of what I call the unFIX model, that I call that the base. The base is the home that fuels all recognition and belonging. And the base, that is like the micro enterprise, or in Spotify language, that would be the tribe. It is that small number of people, roughly between 10 to 200. Dunbar's number comes to mind, for example, of 150 that I sometimes refer to, is the number of people that we can trust, that we don't have to make contracts with, etc. That is the number of people that the Agile Manifesto actually assumed as a starting point, with individuals in interactions over processes and tools. It's the very first value of the Agile Manifesto. And that is trust, basically. But trust does not scale to 100,000 people. I can someone please turn the microphone off, please. Trust does not scale to so many people. I can trust 15 people. I can trust 100 people. But I cannot trust 10,000 or 100,000. So trust doesn't scale. We need to solve that with some kind of model beyond the base. So for me, the base is that container in which we can trust everyone, and everyone who comes to the Friday afternoon barbecue, you could say. That's the first element. Then the second element of my unFIX model is nothing new there, the value stream team. That could be a Scrum team, Kanban team, feature team, doesn't matter. The squads, in the Spotify model. We all know how to do this. They have end-to-end responsibility over a value stream, and they are the most common type. So probably you have multiple of these in your base. That maybe that's the only type you have. Fine, that's great. You could run a business with that. But there are exceptions. Sometimes you need something different besides a value stream crew. One example is a facilitation crew. They go across the value streams. They could be coaches, just a couple of people who help the value streams to get their work done, to get them work faster, to help them coordinate stuff with each other, resolve dependencies, things like that. Could also be 2 or 3 product owners or product managers who work with each other to make sure that stuff is coordinated because we have one backlog. For example, if you work on a larger product. I could also imagine DevOps to be organized like this, where you have 1, 2, 3 people moving across the teams and make sure that they develop their DevOps skills. So this is just one pattern, one type of element that you can apply it multiple times if you want. Another exception to the rule would be what I call the capability crew. In this case, you have a few people with a rare skill. That could be cybersecurity talent. It could be top-rated video animators. It could be data mining experts, something like that. There are people who are very much in demand in the market. You have maybe 2 of them, and you have 7 Scrum teams. How do you deal with that? You cannot divide those 2 people out of over 7 Scrum teams. And besides that, they would not have enough to do if they worked dedicated on one Scrum team. That usually, and this is an exception, but it's a pattern that you will come across less often, but it exists. You make them their own little team, and they sort of hover as travelers across those value stream crews, helping them out where needed, offering them their rare capability, their talent. I have had a situation like this in the past where they were 2 top designers, for example. We had, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 Scrum teams, 2 very well, very good designers who wanted to form their own little team, basically. They didn't have enough to do as top designers dedicated on one Scrum team. And the Scrum teams had their own basic design skills, so there was not really a dependency, but sometimes they wanted something spiffy, our customers, and then we used those 2 designers. And actually, they pulled out at some point and they became a separate company. Next, they became their own base, you could say, and with their own profit and loss and their own customers. And then the other exception to the rule is an obvious one, would be the platform crew. Sometimes at some point, the amount of stuff that the value streams, the Scrum teams are responsible for gets more and more, and they might be sharing a common architecture, a common infrastructure, and you would want to push it out into a separate unit, a separate platform team, who basically becomes their vendor, their supplier. I also have experience with this. Well, this happened. It became too much, and we saw an opportunity in the market actually to turn this into a real separate business, a separate platform product that we began making. That started with as a platform team, then they became a platform business unit, and they got their own customers. And actually, part of that company is in Ukraine. That is one of my experience in Zhytomyr and Kiev. When first trips up and down Ukraine were about this kind of work. That's again a pattern that we see emerging every now and then. You might recognize team topologies here, and that is by design. This is a fantastic book by Matthew Skelton, Manuel Pais. They describe these 4 fundamental team types: the yellow streamline teams, the enabling teams, as they call them. I call them facilitation crews. The red ones, they call them complicated subsystem teams. I think that's a bit difficult word. It doesn't easily roll off the tongue. So I say this is about capability. It's about a talent, the capability that you offer to the others. But I mean the same thing. So to stay true to the source, I even use the same colors. And then the platform team is the green one, is underneath. So far, so good. So this is the source that I credit, but it doesn't stop here. I have identified a few more things that I see as patterns that we can add to the collection of patterns in this model. One is, I don't really care about your product. I care about my experience, and that is something else. To give you an example, I've used the same example quite a few times last couple of weeks because it annoyed me so much. I had this super good app on my phone for doing groceries. It was probably made with the best agile teams in the country. Very slick UI, UX and everything, nothing wrong with it, but I deleted it because I was angry. Why was I angry? Well, it was a shopping app for groceries and I used it 10 times. And out of the 10 times, when it happened 3 times that they came to my house with 1 item missing. And then I got a message an hour before and it said, sorry, we ran out of yogurt. Well, that's annoying. It means that I have to go to the supermarket after all to get the yogurt. And if I have to go to the supermarket after all, I can just as well get everything. Why bother ordering through the app? I mean, now I have 2 things to do: ordering through the app and going to the supermarket. That's a waste of my time. So I said after the 3rd time, sorry, 3 strikes, you're out. This is not working for me. And the product was great. There was nothing wrong with the product. It was logistics that screwed up from my perspective. Sometimes it's customer service screwing up. Sometimes it's finance. Sometimes it is marketing. But we need to understand that customer experience is more than just the product. We have many parts of our company with touch points with the customer. And I'm not the first one to point this out. Clayton Christensen, famous management guru, said new products succeed not because of the features and functionality, but because of the experiences they enable. It is about the entire customer journey that we need to care about. And he popularized the jobs to be done concept, which is something that I recommend that you look into. What is the job, the role here that your product plays in someone's life? That is what you need to understand. And that experience is what you need to optimize. Well, for me, it was refill my fridge and my pantry. That's your job. And you failed because one item is missing 3 times already. So my experience was not a good one. Another famous person, Kathy Shera, game designer, said, the secret to building great products is not creating awesome features, it is creating awesome users. You have to make people feel awesome about themselves through using your product. It is about the happiness molecules you are creating. You're not offering bits and bytes and atoms. No, you're creating happiness molecules in people's heads. That is your job. That's how you should see it. And I completely agree with that. And from this book, Networked, Scaled, and Agile by Amy Cates and co-authors, they identify the same problem as I have. I got the quote that there are examples abound of the crippling effects of agile business units that cannot work together to deliver a whole, complete customer experience at the enterprise level. Something screws it all up. And it could be in the gaps between multiple products. For example, I'm using the products of a bank, well-known bank in the Netherlands, ING. They're famous for their agile ways of working. Well, the app is great, the website is great, But if you navigate between app and website, oh, woe to you. This is annoying. This is not optimized. It is a weak part of the customer experience. They have improved it, but it sucked in the past. So my suggestion for that is we need to go beyond product. We need to have an experience crew. It is similar to the facilitation crew. It just sits on the front end of the business and monitors the customer journey from the very first time someone discovers your company, your product, to the moment they say goodbye. Finally, all of that in between is the customer journey. And this experience crew should feel responsible for just watching what happens, monitoring with social media monitoring, customer interviews, whatever, just figuring out where does the experience suck, and then work with the various value stream crews to iron out those issues, because very often the problems are between those teams. Because in the Agile community, we got rid of functional silos, but those were vertical silos. We replaced them with horizontal silos. The product silos, basically, is just another type of silo, but it is still sub-optimization, what is very often happening in the Agile community. Now, since I added this on one side of the diagram, I can add exactly the same concept on the other side for the freelancers, the gig workers, the vendors and suppliers that we're working with, our business partners, anyone that we sign contracts with, because the experience economy nowadays it coincides with the gig economy. It's becoming more and more important, not only to work well with your customers, but also with the ones who provide you with all the resources in order to be able to run your business. I call that the acquisition crew. It is the mirror of the experience crew, you could say, and they care about the experience of the business partners and the gig workers, etc., etc. The last one that I added is, and that was a no-brainer for me, the management team. I even made it blue to make it coincide with the management 3.0 color, which is blue. So that's where the managers go, up there at the top. The governance crew is the management team, basically. And this is important. Managers are not allowed to go anywhere else. They have to stay out of every other crew. So there's no managers on the capability crew, not on the platform crew, not on any of the Scrum teams, etc. Stay out of everywhere. Your box is the blue box. That's the blue team, and that's where you define the constraints of self-organization. Basically, that's your job. Like the gardener of a garden defines how the garden will work, and then the flowers and the trees and everything will do the growing and the blooming, etc. You don't have to care about that. That's self-organization, but the constraints need to be put in place. That is a management job. And I identify this as important because some of the Agile frameworks, or actually none of them, say where the managers go. Only the Spotify model has done that. They say the chapters have chapter leads and the chapter leads are managers. But it's not in SAFe, it is not in LESS, it is not in most of the others that I have seen. And the side effect of this is that you may end up with a matrix organization. You may end up with an organization where people have different managers and they could be on the same team even, and the management lines are undefined. That makes it, so to say, easier to introduce those Agile frameworks because they say, well, we don't have to change any management reporting lines. Sure. But the side effect could be a matrix. And I found some very important comments on matrix organizations. This is what I found in Nikolai Warren's book on organization design. He said, one key finding with matrix structures is that higher level managers become overloaded because lower level managers are unable to resolve conflicts. And therefore, they refer conflicts to the executives. So in other words, an unintended consequence of the matrix structure is that it makes the organization more centralized, because more stuff at the lowest level where there are any issues that are unresolved gets escalated multiple layers up until it comes to someone's desk who can resolve the problem. And you have, as a side effect of the matrix, that you have a more centralized operating organization. Here you see a visualization of what the matrix could be. You have maybe 5 team members, and those team members have different managers, and those managers have also different managers, and that can go up 2, 3, 4 levels until finally at some point it comes together, and usually only at the CEO's desk by that time. Someone a couple of weeks ago in my last workshop in Sofia, Bulgaria, said, I had exactly this problem, he said, where we have a matrix organization, people escalate issues to their managers, those managers don't know each other, so they just refer it back to the next level up. And the CEO is trying to solve the silliest little things that happen on the Scrum teams. It makes no sense at all, he said to me. That's the result of the matrix. So my suggestion is you need to define where management goes. It is the blue box in this model. And no matter where people work in the base, no matter which team, which crew they are on, they will always have their manager in the blue box. So that means whatever happens, if people escalate it, it ends up at the blue team. They will have to solve it because they are one team. By default, they know each other. They should have one objective or just a couple of OKRs, whatever. They should be able to resolve the conflict. It is like catching all the exceptions, no matter where they happen. You catch them at the next level up and you prevent them from escalating uncaught and basically blowing up your architecture. So those are the patterns I found. But there's one more thing that I consider interesting and important. We have many things going on in the world, as you have noticed. That's why we have these meetings with Agile with Ukraine. Sometimes there's a crisis that you need to respond to. You do not always have time for forming, storming, norming, performing. Imagine if the fire department would have to go through this ritual for every fire that they have to put out. That doesn't make any sense. They have already done this forming, norming, storming, performing at the base level with each other as an entire base. So it doesn't matter which combination of firemen is pulled from whoever is available, they know how to get their stuff done. It is the same in other industries where you have airline crews joining in any kind of combination, and they will know how to run the plane and get people safely from one place to the other. They don't have to go through a bunch of trust exercises with each other before we can all take off. That doesn't make any sense. So in other industries, they already know how to work with dynamic teams, and they are even the default there. It's just something that we in the Agile community, most of us do software development, that we are not used to, and actually that we have always advised against for good reasons. But I want to question some assumptions behind those reasons. Why? Because there are benefits. There are benefits for reteaming. Dynamic Reteaming is a book written by Heidi Helfand. I can very much recommend it. She describes the benefits and the drawbacks. You need to make an honest decision here and not say this is evil, you should never do it. No, there are good parts and bad parts of reteaming. One good thing is that you're better able to deal with fast change, an increased pace of change with one crisis or one opportunity after the other. Sometimes that requires you to form new teams on the spot to pursue some new opportunity. And another reason could be a better employee experience because of personal development and career growth. that you want to offer to people. One person who has inspired me in this, without him realizing why, is Martin Fowler, whose favorite quote is, "If it hurts, do it more often." And he has used this quote in the past to say we need to release software more often, because in the 90s, we released software once per year. I remember that. It was on CDs, and before that on discs and floppies. And oh my God, it was painful. You didn't want to do that every day. But then these guys came and said in 2001, why don't you do it every month? Why don't you do it twice per month? Why not every week? Just increase the pace. Yes, it is painful, but if you do it more often, you will learn how to get rid of the pain, and then you will enjoy all the benefits. And that has been true. And now we have software released multiple times per day. We have solved all those pain points, basically. Now, for the last 15 years, I have been part of the Agile community, and we have been saying, don't change your teams, because if you change your teams, you destroy your velocity, and that will hurt. And everyone has been like, yes, yeah, makes total sense. I was in the audience as well, and that's exactly like that. I assumed that was correct. But now I wonder, if it hurts, shouldn't we do it more often? Shouldn't we just learn how to do this better? Because there are benefits that we miss out on if we do not learn how to do this reteaming better. I'll give you an example. I wrote a case study of Pipedrive 2 or 3 weeks ago. They're in Tallinn, Estonia. And they do dynamic reteaming in the following way. They have what they call a launch pad, which is the team at the bottom of the base here. They call them tribes, but it's the same thing. And the launch pad is responsible for the common stuff: maintenance, bug fixes, removing technical debt, small issues, etc., etc. But when there's anything important to be done, like a new feature set to be developed or a migration to be done from one architecture or one platform to another, whatever, they make mission teams for that. Those mission teams, they exist for a few weeks up to a few months, and the engineers then spend their time fully dedicated to that mission team. And that mission team usually has a mission lead, which is one of the engineers. It's all based on volunteering. So people decide what they want to work on, which mission they want to join, and then they make that happen. And the mission team creates that new feature set until it is done. And then they land on the launch pad. Actually, the ones on the launch pad decide whether the mission team is allowed to land, because they check, do you have all the test unit tests in place? Do you have proper documentation so we can maintain, etc., etc.? They have the definition of done for accepting the landing of a mission. And when the mission has landed, people rotate. So usually those who have been on missions, they go to the launch pad. Those who have been on the launch pad, they go on next missions. So there's a continuous rotation going on of people between the missions and the launch pad. And usually they have maybe 2 or 3 missions going on. Those are the crews who have left, you could say metaphorically, they have left the base, they're flying, and they will come back in a couple of weeks, a couple of months with their new code, requesting to land on the launch pad. I like the metaphor that they use. Pre-COVID, by the way, they literally reformed in their offices. They moved people around so that those mission teams were together in one room. Now, this is just one example of reteaming. I have a blog post on it, Pipedrive, unFIX. Just type Pipedrive and unFIX, you should be able to find it through Google. But it's not the only company. Redgate Software does reteaming once per year. They have an annual event for it, and then people can decide whether or not they want to work on another team. On average, about 1/3 of people choose voluntarily to work on another team. And yes, they say they see a dip in velocity, but it's not big. Customers don't really notice it. The benefits are much higher, they say, at Redgate Software, because it gives people autonomy. It gives them a chance to work on their career, personal development, discover new tech stacks, etc. Another example is the Serious Scrum blog by Willem-Jan Ageling. They do reteaming every sprint. So they have about 50 people, as I understand from the blog posts, and every sprint, they have a number of sprint goals, and then everyone gets together like a big swarming exercise, like open space, and they decide who wants to work on these goals and who wants to work on this goal, and they figure it out in an hour or something, what the new team formation will be for the next sprint in the cadence. So together as 50 people, they're responsible for everything, and every sprint, the combination of people is different. An extreme example is Tesla. Joe Justice, famous in the Agile community, has worked at Tesla for a good amount of time, and they do reteaming every 3 hours at Tesla. Imagine that. Every 3 hours, they sign up for a new task. Again, volunteered, it's all swarming. People swarm to the things that they like to work on, and then it's all self-organized. They pick an item from the task board and they work on it. And he said, learning goes through the roof. Within a couple of weeks, you've worked with everyone in the whole base, and you've learned basically everything about how to make a car, from paint to robots to whatnot. It's amazing, but it's up to you to decide what you want to work on. Pipedrive is organized in 17 tribes that all have this mechanism of launch pads and mission teams. Those are just different examples, different possibilities. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should do reteaming. I'm just saying that what we've always said, which is don't reteam, that's wrong. That is an incorrect assumption there behind it, because there are benefits and drawbacks, and we just need a fair assessment of what could we win with this versus what would be the pain that we need to address. And it is worth figuring that out, whether reteaming is something for your company, your base. I'll give you a couple more examples of things that you can draw with the unFIX elements. This would be my drawing of safe or less. You would have a couple of feature teams, as they would call them in the language of less, and then probably two types of facilitation crews. One does agile coaching and the other does product ownership, because those things need to be coordinated across those teams, because there are dependencies that need to be addressed, that need to be resolved, perhaps. There are probably some forums, that's my word for guilds, basically, where you want to discuss, I don't know, UX stuff or backend development or whatever, just the things that you're interested in. Similar to the Spotify model that has guilds. So you see those shining through in the back, in gray, the functional forums. But that is a very common solution. And then, of course, there's a management team there in the blue, the governance crew. I call that a fully integrated base. That means that they create one product with each other. Together, they have this one thing that they make. However, there are other kinds of businesses. Pipedrive is an example of a microservices company. They have teams that are independent of each other in terms of how often they release. They can release many times per day at Pipedrive. They have all the infrastructure for that. They've been there, done that. So they have no cadence across their tribes. They don't need that because they all operate at their own speeds on those crews. But they might want to check the experience of the customer journeys of their customers on their platform with an experienced crew, for example. Maybe they have a platform crew. I'm sure they have platform crews at Pipedrive, but at such microservices companies, you often have platform crews offering services to the rest. I call that a strongly aligned base. They make one thing, but it is not like in a lockstep cadence, all connected with each other. They roam around more freely than that. Another example would be the loosely aligned base. In this case, you have a number of teams, maybe Scrum teams, whatever, but they have their own customers. They work independently of each other, maybe because it's an outsourcing company. And I know there are these examples in Ukraine, outsourcing businesses, they have customers in the West part of Europe, and each Scrum team has its own client, but they might have a facilitation crew of coaches helping them out with Agile practices, maybe a capability crew of two cybersecurity experts or some other people with talent that is sometimes needed for the customers, but not always, not on all the projects. You probably do not have a platform crew because that usually makes no sense in an outsourcing company. The last example would be the fully segregated base. In this case, the various teams in the base, they basically compete with each other. It's not just that they are independent, they compete for the same customers. You could think of an incubator where you have one base, one unit, a business unit in a larger company that has as its job to discover new products as internal startups. And they could be multiple teams trying to solve the same problem in different ways. May the best one win. I have seen a similar solution at games companies where, for example, in Helsinki, Rovio, the makers of Angry Birds, they make small games. Those are as one team per game, basically, and they compete for the same customers because you can only play one game at a time. So they compete for eyeballs across those teams. But it is healthy competition. It's they're all one company, so it doesn't matter much which game wins as long as a few of them are winners and the others are written off, and then they will try to develop another one. And then definitely they have platforms in a company like that. They might have an experienced crew, so you see the same elements returning here. By the way, that concept of 4 different kinds of businesses, fully integrated, strongly aligned, loosely aligned, and fully segregated, I have that also from this book, Networked, Scaled, and Agile, with some design strategies for complex organizations. And typically what SAFe and LESS do, they target only one of these types, which is the fully integrated kind of businesses, where multiple teams make one product with one cadence, with released on a specific schedule. But there are 3 other types that are not addressed by SAFe and LESS, and they are covered with unFIX. So to be honest, this is the real picture of unFIX. This is a Miro template with all the elements that you can use to do your own little bit of designing with the different types of bases and the different kinds of teams and a few different kinds of forums. And that's it. It's just a couple of building blocks for you to play with. And people have already been using this in Brazil and China, Bulgaria, Germany, and other places where people use the Miro template to just try and design their own base, their own organization, or their own part of their organization. Because it is not one framework, it is like a collection of patterns. It is actually a pattern language with a number of patterns that you can combine in multiple ways, in any way that you want. But the patterns come with suggestions on how to use them, basically. And what I hope that will happen at some point is that those bases, they go through life cycle stages. I will not go into that because that's another topic as part of my book, Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up, that I have written a few years ago. But every business model goes through the life cycle stages of problem, solution fit, and product market fit, and et cetera, scaling up. At first you try to do the right thing, and then you do that thing right. So you move from exploration to execution. And then the company is basically a collection of these bases that are in different positions of those life cycle stages. Some of them are very young, they just got started. A few are in the middle, they're scaling up. And then we have a couple of big ones that are basically the money makers. They are the ones that exploit, that execute the business model that they have found. But at some point they will die. That's for sure, because every business model will die at some point. And and if you look at it like this, and that is how Hire does this, they have this network of 4,000 units that are all in different parts of their life cycle stages. Hire doesn't care which unit is in which stage of its life cycle, as long as the entire ecosystem is healthy. And there's a continuous influx and emergence of new bases, new micro enterprises, and many of them die because they don't survive. But some of them grow up and they become healthy and fat, and then they will hand it over after a while. For me, the metaphor that I like using is that of Lego. I am a big fan of Lego. I have used Lego since I was young, with a big Lego box when I was 6, 7 years old, and I was making all kinds of things. And I remember well that my brother was not into Lego, he was into Playmobil. There was a bit of a competition back home. What is better, Lego or Playmobil? And he was fan of Playmobil. And I thought that didn't make any sense with Playmobil, because with Playmobil, you get something out of the box and it says, well, this is your house. Have fun playing with it. And then what you can do basically was move the figurines around, and that was it. And I said, that's so boring. You cannot make anything with Playmobil. You could just play with it. With Lego, I could make my own house. And if I was bored of the house, I could break it up and turn it into a spaceship. And then it was suddenly a spaceship instead of a house. That is how I see what unFIX is. It's more like a Lego box. And if I look at frameworks out there, to me, they're more like Playmobil. You get something out of the box. This is the picture. There are no variations of the picture. This is the only picture that you get. And yes, you can modify some aspects of it. That feels like Playmobil to me. I prefer seeing unFIX like a Lego box. You have some basic elements, but you can reorganize them in any way that you want. And you can make many versions of it. That's why on the homepage of the unFIX website, I collect already the different screenshots that people have submitted to the community as different things that they have built with their Lego box, basically. Now, of course, some people have comments, lots of great feedback, by the way, on unFIX, on the unFIX model and the ideas behind it. Also some critical comments that I received from people. A few people said, oh no, not another framework. Well, actually, I agree with that. This is not another framework, because it is not a framework. It is a pattern library. It is a Lego box of useful things that I found in other sources, and I credit them all. I borrowed from Spotify model and team topologies and dynamic reteaming and organization design, etc. It's not a framework. It's a pattern language, basically. Some said this is nothing new. Indeed, because all the patterns already existed. I did not invent a single one myself. I just borrow and refer to the sources. Some said this is unproven. That is actually also correct, because the picture as a cohesive set is new. I published it on January. So it is too early to say now which companies have been inspired by the unFIX model and have reorganized themselves according to what Jurgen has suggested as a Lego box of patterns. That's too early. We just got started 2 months ago. So I hope we will get such stories soon. And then last is we don't need another one-size-fits-all approach. I completely agree with that. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think we can have 1,000 sizes with the unFIX model. Like Lego, you can have small things to build. You can have big things to build with your Lego box. It's all up to you. Anders Iverson, my friend at Spotify, who was one of the co-authors of the Spotify model, he had some very kind words for me. He said, the unFIX model basically solves the problems that we saw at Spotify and that they have fixed since they published the Spotify model. So what they actually do at Spotify looks a lot more like unFIX now than the original Spotify model. Imagine that. It's just common sense advice that I captured from different sources. So thanks to Anders for his recommendation. I have plenty more to do. I'm working on more case studies. I was just in conversation with a company this morning. We're going to do a case study together with them. I want to help the frameworks out there because I think there are some issues with SAFe and LESS and others, but they're easily resolved. I have some suggestions like how to get rid of the matrix. I have an idea there. I also have suggestions for the experience crew that is missing, and the platform concept is missing in LESS, for example. But there's no conflict. It's just things that I offer as suggestions how we could have a more complete package, you could say. So that's something to work on. And as I said in the beginning, portfolios, finance, marketing, HR, those also deserve some attention because they are in pain as well. And none of the Agile frameworks, except for SAFe, they do portfolio stuff, but that's it basically. None of the Agile frameworks has any suggestions for them. And unFIX, it's just all patterns basically that can also apply to HR. Actually, at Hire, they have multiple HR units. They're all bases. They offer their services to the rest of the network, and the other units, the micro enterprises, can simply purchase HR from any of those platform bases. So Hire does exactly what I suggest everyone should be doing. Very inspirational organization, and I'm trying to give you the language to do what such a company has done for themselves. I have some blog posts out there comparing what unFIX is with some of the existing models. Well, there's the website unfix.work, where I recommend that you check out the more elaborate descriptions, and you can join the community. The slides, by the way, will be uploaded to this community. It's a little bit of an incentive to sign up. If you want to have the PDF, just sign up and you'll find them in the downloads section shortly after this meetup. And I hope to see some screenshots of what people have been playing with the Miro template that you can also find in the downloads folder of the community. So that's it. I did a lot of talking. I haven't died yet, so that's a good thing. I'm still ready to take questions if you have any. I will leave the questions moderation to Andri or any of the other organizers.
Thanks a lot, Jurgen. Okay, so guys, we're going to Q&A. So we welcome you to ask the questions. Okay, so far we only have thanks. Thanks, Aline.
Thank you too, Aline.
So how do managers react to being in the blue box only?
Well, I have been a manager like that, and I love it. It is exactly the kind of work that I love to be doing. It is like you need to learn as a manager, and that is all what Manager 3.0 is about. You are responsible for a beautiful garden. You cannot tell the flowers how to grow or how to bloom or whatever. That's what the garden itself needs to do. But you're responsible for setting up the constraints, making sure there are nutrients, putting up a fence. I love that metaphor. It's been used many times by other authors as well. That is what you do in the blue box. You define the constraints on self-organization. For example, at Pipedrive, it was a management decision to come up with the concept of the launch pad and the mission teams. And people love it. And they specifically did this, by the way, because engineers were quitting their jobs. They wanted to solve the problem of people not enjoying their jobs enough. And they realized that with autonomy of people comes the possibility of selecting what you want to work on. People should have the possibility of volunteering for a new feature set or for whatever needs to be done. Say, yeah, I want to do that. I'm going to take the lead. I become the mission leader. And that is so motivating, it turns out. So turnover dropped tremendously at Pipedrive because they introduced dynamic reteaming. And this was a management decision. So I think this is a fantastic job to be there in the blue box, where you have to think of these kinds of things. How can I make self-organization work really well with very happy people who are not going to quit their jobs? That's your job over there in the blue box.
Thanks a lot. And I've seen the hand of Artem. So Artem, what is your question?
Yeah, I was just typing it. So I was wondering if we should have separate teams, autonomous teams, acting like separate enterprises inside a bigger company. Should they have their own financial HR representatives, or are there any patterns about it? You mentioned that teams may consider purchasing like HR services or financing, but do you have some examples or patterns about that?
Yeah. So as I said, my inspiration is higher, but they're not the only ones. Semco in Brazil has done the same. There are books about that by Ricardo Semla. But for now, I use higher as the example. The CEO, Mr. Zhang, finds it very important that the managers of those micro enterprises are entrepreneurs. They need to see themselves as running their own business. That means they have the right to decide who works for them, how much do we pay them, where do we purchase our services from the rest of the network. So they have the right to say, well, I see here 4 or 5 different HR units that could help me with people development, but I don't like any of them. I know a local partner here in Shanghai, whatever, I'm going to work with them. They have that right. It's their business. They have the obligation of making their unit have a good performance, and they measure on that. All those units, they have their KPIs, etc., etc. And the way they get their business run, it's up to them. And I think it's a liberating for them, because they are not forced to purchase services from another part of a company that is simply overpriced. If they know that I can get the same thing cheaper or better somewhere else in the market, they have the freedom to do that. And only when you introduce that concept will you be able to break the hierarchy in a business and say, well, from now on, you know, HR, you have a job. You are selling a service to the rest of the business. And if nobody wants to purchase your service, sorry, you're out of job. but people development has to be done. So those entrepreneurs who are responsible for their businesses, they somehow need to have those HR roles filled, whether they hire a person themselves, or purchase that service in the network or locally. It's up to them, but it's work that needs to be done. It's just the freedom of being allowed to make this decision yourself is what makes Hire's model revolutionary. They completely made it flat. 4,000 units working with each other. It does come, by the way, with interesting side effects, such as some bases, microenterprises specializing in helping others find each other and do contracting with each other, because there are 4,000 around. Where do I even begin? So there are some of them, they become the glue in the network, but they also get paid for that.
So it sounds like they have those facilitation bodies, which are big facilitation crews.
Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
Now, that is my next thing that I'm working on. I think this is fully fractal, because I think that what you've seen, those patterns inside the base, you see the same patterns at the next level, where the bases can form a value stream with each other to build a larger product, because 15 people is not enough to make a vacuum cleaner or a refrigerator or a notebook, and they make such products at Hire, but they always need multiple units together. Some of the bases offer platform services. They offer infrastructure, digital infrastructure, data mining, whatever. Some focus on the customer experience. They do only marketing stuff. So you see those bases, some of them do facilitation, some of them do platform stuff, some of them do management stuff. So you see the same patterns emerging at the next level.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you too. Next question.
We have a question from Paul.
Yeah.
And Paul is asking you to talk more about the implementation of unFIX idea in large and heterogeneous organizations.
Okay, so more about implementing the Paul, it is 2 months old. I do not have the experience of already being in large organizations and helping them with the unFIX model. I just published it 2 months ago. So the community has now started to embrace it, started experimenting, and I need to wait for results to come in. On top of that, I am not a coach or consultant. I do not go into companies to do consultancy. That's what I have partners for. They do this kind of work, and I need to wait for partners to have such experiences and report back to me. What are their findings? What works? What does not work? For now, it is too early to have that kind of feedback. I can only say the individual patterns that I collected, we've seen those at many companies. There's thousands have already experience with platform teams, and thousands have experience with facilitation crews, etc. Those are not new concepts, the individual patterns in the box. It's just the collection as a whole is new, and for that we have to wait until we have some feedback from the market.
Paul, you wanted to add something, because I've seen you turn the mic.
Yeah, no, actually, your answer, and thanks, Jurgen, your answer to Artem got to a lot of what I was interested in.
Okay,
That
cool.
Facilitation and negotiating, even the relationships among bases, I think is going to be some of the really interesting stuff that comes out of this. Because
definitely, yeah, and as I said, I think it is fractal, but there's a hypothesis, and that I love to have that tested this year, or as soon as we can, that we can see the same patterns emerging at the next level up. And then we have solved all the problems basically of describing how HR could work, how marketing could work, how everything could work beyond just the product organization, which is what the scaling frameworks are limited to usually.
Great, thanks again.
Okay, and we have a question from Alona, Alana, maybe I would ask you to turn the microphone on because
Yeah, sure. I
I'm not-
noticed that people were typing questions and they decided not to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly because, and first and foremost, Jurgen, thank you. Super inspiring. And I mean, my hands are literally itching to try some of the stuff. It's just that there are two things, like two concepts, which go two separate ways in my head, and maybe I missed the link that changed them. So this Chinese company that you started with is super inspiring, right? 4,000 mini businesses.
Yeah.
And the dynamic staffing, so dynamic teams where people are like the air crew sort of change. I just fail to see how these two can be combined, because the way I imagine, if this is like a small business with 10 to 15 people in the team, and they are dedicated to one product, like the calendar, the other ones are the rockets, etc., etc. Well, despite the things that you said in Tesla, I do believe that there might be quite a few issues where people would just leave one team with one business and go to the other team and do another business. Or maybe they were not supposed to be interlinked, these concepts.
Well, let's begin with Pipedrive as an example, because I have a case study on that. Their average size of their tribes, as they call them, is about 25 people. And so that's slightly smaller than what I say. Usually I use Dunbar's number of 150. What is the number of people that we're able to trust, that we hang out with, that will come to the barbecue on Friday afternoon, you could say. But that's up to you to define what kind of size would you like. At Hire, they define it really small. They're all about 15 people. And they don't define how they operate within those 15. That's up to the management to decide. I have, with the unFIX model, I have a picture of how you could organize your base, your microenterprise, your tribe on the inside. There's not much that you need if you only have 15 people. Then probably you can leave it undefined and you just have self-organizing bunch and they will figure it out. But if you decide to make it larger, like 25 or 50 or maybe even 100, you're going to need some of these patterns to make this work for you. And then you could have, that's your choice, you could introduce reteaming to some extent. Once per year, once per month, I don't care. Well, it's up to you what you think might be useful that would increase the employee experience for those who work within that base. So you need to make a distinction between what happens inside the base, which is what I defined with unFIX now, and how do multiple bases work with each other, which is what Hire has solved. And that is my next step with the unFIX model that I want to describe in the next couple of months. Those are two different things. Cool. But I think it is fractal, because I think we're going to see a repetition of the same patterns. That would be the most beautiful solution, actually, to see the same thing repeat itself at the next level. And you will find that interesting, I think. At Hire, they do a lot of contracting between those micro enterprises, because it's nearly 100,000 people. You cannot trust 100,000 people. The human mind is not equipped for that. So yes, they sign contracts with each other, but they made this super easy because they have platform micro enterprises that do this kind of stuff, that help the others sign contracts with each other. It's smart contracts and that kind of stuff. So lots of it is automated. And so Hire has solved how do multiple bases work with each other in a flat playing field as an ecosystem. They don't describe what happens inside each base. They say, that's up to you. I offer some elements on how to do that on the inside.
Thank you. It clicked now. Thank you.
Cool.
Oh, and we have a question from Richard. Yeah, Richard needs to leave. Maybe we can answer it shortly. So, in large regulated organizations, where typically compliance, risk management departments place such functions, they need to span over and support the complete organization, etc. So, would they be a capability group?
I am working on that problem as we speak.
Okay.
So indeed, traditionally, that means that you would have, yeah, you would have some overarching department that tells the others what to do and says, thou shalt be compliant with these laws. And we have a committee checking on everything and doing auditing or whatever. You can't have that if you have autonomous units that run their own business. However, it is in the interest of these autonomous units to be compliant with the laws of the country and whatnot. I mean, you don't want to come out with a product that turns out to be rejected in the market because it doesn't satisfy some basic constraints. So even if you run your own independent micro enterprise, you might want to hire a unit that offers compliance services and says, we're going to help you with that. This is our fee, and then we're going to make sure that your product that comes out is complying with everything out there. By the way, we offer the same service to some of your friends in the network because this is what we do as a base. And then, yeah, that would be like a capability base, perhaps. That will be people specialized in compliance stuff. They know all about the law. Like in banking, for example, there's a lot of laws around banking, how to operate as a bank. There are some few people know all about that, what you need to do as a bank. I can imagine a couple of bases, micro enterprises, just specializing in that, and they would be a capability base in the larger organization offering this service to the others. And yeah, I think that would solve your problem. And then you purchase that service. And that I think is the much healthier approach than being controlled by such a unit who is somewhere higher up in the hierarchy or something like that.
Thanks a lot. And the last question for today is about what do we do with performance management? How does it work in the unFIX model? It's a question from Andrea.
Yeah, I see it. Depends on how exactly you define performance management, because there are lots of interpretations on that. But assuming you mean how do people do their work and how do we evaluate them in the company? Well, that's what the blue team is responsible for. They decide who works and how much they get paid, and if they are hired or fired. So ultimately, it's their responsibility to have a performance evaluation going on. However, they can delegate a lot of that again to the self-organizing base. I mean, they can have coaches and mentors and 360-degree meetings going on, etc. Just making sure that information is gathered in an open and transparent way about who has done what and contributed to where and what compliments have they received from others. And then a couple of times, maybe once, twice per year, you have to go through all that mountain of input for each employee and say, well, this is all the data that we have about what you have done here in this base. You have worked on these crews. I see you have been part of 2 missions this year. One of them you have volunteered as a mission lead, so congrats for that. We have this input from the 360s that were organized by the coaches. All right, so let's talk about your salary. That would be a job for the people on the blue team. They don't have to do all those meetings themselves, 360 meetings and one-on-ones, etc., etc. You can delegate quite a lot to the base. But what they're responsible for is indeed at some point performance needs to be evaluated, because you need to know which people do we want to work with and which people do we need to say goodbye to, because performance doesn't seem up to what we expect. The exact approach I leave to the managers. I have some suggestions in my Management 3.0 books with merit money, for example, and kudo cards and all that stuff. All that remains. I can just shove it into this model, into the blue box, basically. That's where this stuff belongs. Yeah, that's my answer for performance management. But I've tried not to describe any process. I think that is clear. The model focuses only on organizational structure at this point. I think that is what is lacking in the frameworks that we have. They do a lot of process stuff, and good for them. For any process, I just refer to less and safe and whatever. They do a good job. I don't need to describe again on how to do retrospectives. I mean, why would I? It makes no sense. This has been covered. But they are very weak on organizational structure. They leave a lot undefined and incomplete. And I think it is time for well, maybe unFIX to fix that problem with organizational structure, do it well, have a complete set of patterns. And that could be helpful for the other frameworks as well.
Okay, that was the last question. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Thanks a
Awesome.
lot, everybody. Thanks a lot, Jurgen. I'm going to post once again in the chat the information how you can help Ukraine. So please donate, and see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we also have an awesome speaker. It's going to be Wilbert Seal, an awesome topic. So come join us, and thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and
Thank
you're
you so
gonna feel
much.
better soon.
Thanks.
Get
And
well.
thank you
you
for
very much.
getting through with your talk with us.
Thanks. Thanks for the invite, and have fun with all the other sessions. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.